All right, hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out as always. So with the release of our new friend Jarl just around the corner, I thought I would take our Redline Vin set out for one last spin. I think our days are numbered on Redline, unfortunately. Super fun build, super high ceiling, like it feels quite good. I've been sort of on hard mid-range for a little while now. And it's sort of refreshing to come back to Redline. It's really fun to see what you can get away with. Ceiling super high, maybe it lacks in consistency, which is maybe where the strength and mid-range sort of lies, but there's no doubt about it. It's a super fun way to play the deck. So I recorded a couple videos, and I want to do that like short form gameplay that I did before. Some really great feedback from you guys about that. You guys liked that format. A lot of new players reaching out saying that it's been helpful in them learning the deck. And while this list is probably going to look quite different to the list that we're going to have to put together for Jarl, I think it's still helpful to see sort of like the lines. There's some really interesting lines in these games, so I'm looking forward to getting into them. We will come back to what I'm thinking in terms of a direction for Vincent once Jarl is released. It's hard to say ahead of time like what the meta is going to actually look like and how Jarl is going to impact the meta, but essentially put more blues in the list. So I'll show you in a second just like my initial thinking on that, but we'll come back to it once Jarl's released. Before I do though, make sure you get in on the giveaway. I posted our 1,000 subscriber giveaway announcement. We're still, a little ways from 1,000. We're approaching 800 now. So still a road ahead of us. So please consider subscribing if you do find this content helpful. If you're not subscribed already, please consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, go take a look at that 1,000 subscriber giveaway announcement and comment on that video once you're subscribed to get in on our giveaway. I'm going to be giving away some of these lovely dice that I've created with our logo, as well as some resource symbols here, 1, 2, and 3. Great way to track your incantation triggers, malefic incantation, for example. And there's also shield symbols, so -1 and -2 to track your shield. So anyways, or I guess your battle horn. So without further ado, let's take a quick look at my initial thinking on what the Jarl deck might look like. Here it is. So essentially, I'm just trying to throw some more blues in the list. Blue Deathly Whale is a no-brainer. I think that one's going to make it into the list when we're trying to find more blues. That's the first addition. It's just going to make the main board. The rest of the main board is going to look quite familiar. I don't know. Funeral Moon, it blocks well. It's very versatile. But if I'm looking for another piece to cut, I think Funeral Moon might be the next one on the chopping block. But I'm not so sure about that quite yet. Made some adjustments to the sideboard as well. So inventory here, we're still on 2 pummel, becomes especially attractive as an option when we have more blues or access to more blues. Envelop in Darkness is another one that I'm sort of on the fence about. So I think the two that if I'm, trying to find more room for blues, or if I'm trying to sort of alter the deck a little bit further, I think Envelop in Darkness as well as Funeral Moon are the ones that I'm looking at. You'll notice I cut Read the Runes. That might be controversial. It's just and especially if we're entering a meta where it's a little bit grindier and we want those setup turns, Read the Runes might actually be the call. So Envelop might, that could be Read the Runes. These Funeral Moons might be Read the Runes. I don't know yet. So this is just my initial thinking, but the rest of them, I did bump us up. If we are going to go more mid-range, planning on maybe just swinging one thing per turn, being able to block. I did up our D-React count to 9. So Haunting Rendition is not a D-React, but it is very versatile as a piece. I really like this piece, actually. It feels great into Azalea, feels great into a lot of different things where you might want to block, but also it can get you out of a little bit of a jam by preventing 2, instead of blocking for 4, preventing 2 and creating Rune Chant. So I really like Haunting Rendition, but we're also on Reduce to Rune Chant and Sink Below. So up to 9 D-Reacts is my initial thinking, just turtle up a little bit more, throw some more blues in, just do one thing per turn, or focus on doing that. Envelop in Darkness is still a great target if you're running Tunic. And it also is a really good resource curve with Pummel. So you pitch a blue to go envelop Pummel. Obviously, throw that plan out the window if Jarl is taxing you with Frostbites, but it is what it is. Shadow Averser, you could also go 2 of Shadow Averser. The other blues I'm considering, so this brings us up to 13 blues, I believe. Yeah, 9 in the main board, 4 in the sideboard that can come in, 13. If you want to go up to 16, I think that's a high volume of blues, but we might need it. I don't know. Some more blues that I'm considering is Blue Pummel. Very versatile. Once again, blocks for 2 is the downside. Blue Lunging Press. This is if you want to build a deck that could kind of pivot between high defense and high offense against, though, like, you know, if we still have a lot of aggro in the meta. Then Lunging Press is an interesting piece. It allows you to kind of get over those breakpoints to guarantee an on-hit, like a Succumb to Temptation on-hit is devastating. Even one more over with the Pummel if they do have a D-React and they block Xaxes, or Mavrian Skies is the dream. So, you know, making a Mavrian Skies hit, giving it +1 with a 0 cost, making it hit, making those 3 rune chants, just further threatens that. So if you want a high offensive, if you want potential for high offense in your deck still, I would consider putting in Lunging Press and yellow Mavrian Skies. So there's 6 there. I would maybe cut the envelops, and maybe I don't know if you can run both 9 D-Reacts and have that offensive package. So you might cut, go back down to 6 D-Reacts. I don't know which ones, choose your own adventure, and then go up. So cut the envelope, cut the reduce, or cut Funeral Moon. And consider putting the Lunging Press and Mauve Skies. But for now, this is sort of like my base. I just want to try a little bit more of a turtley, long game, throw one thing per turn type style deck, just to see how it feels into the new meta. So this is my starting point. But again, we'll come back to it. We'll do some gameplay. We'll tweak this, I'm sure. So still some things I'm on the fence about, but there you go. Okay. I wanted to take a look at some games here that we recently played. This one, against a Boltyn. So again, this is Redline. This is not what I'm talking about with Jarl. We're not yet testing Jarl, so I wanted to give Redline one last spin, or take it out for one last spin before our fun gets ruined with Jarl. So here I'm deciding to go more defensive, putting in my 6 D-Reacts as well as Ravenous Rabble and Succumb to Temptation. Honestly, Succumb to Temptation might just be in main board. Again, our days are numbered on Redline, but it's still fun to kind of take it out for one last spin. So we'll evaluate my lines. We will see where I went wrong here. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these lines are going to be similar to even when we do have more heavy blue builds. Like, all of these cards are in the blue build as well. So this is a hand that you could draw on a heavy blue build. On this turn 0, I am just going to play out this Reduce, paying for it to set up a rune chant on opponent's turn. We don't mind so much taking 1. I do like these 2 pieces as setup pieces, so I decided to hold them back and just take 1 as a tax to hold those good setup pieces. And then we're probably just going to still set up on this turn. Put a nice Runegate card in Banish, turn 1 rune chant into 3 rune chants with our Deadwood Dirge, set up Malefic Incantation, and I'm just going to go back a little bit. Was it Bounding Demagon? What did we put in Arsenal? Yeah, it was a Bounding Demagon that we put in Arsenal. So just a simple setup turn, trying to set up for some damage output that we can kind of string together. See what they have. They have a Take Flight. This card I'm not that worried about. It has Native Go again. It doesn't really have an on hit. So I think, I just decided to take this here. 34. See what else they present us. On our turn, so now Raiden Dustbane, they can just give this go again. It doesn't have any on hits again, so it's just vanilla damage. And so I think I'm just trying to evaluate my hand, what my next turn's going to look like. And I made an error here. I should not have blocked with this Funeral Moon. I was just kind of like, I wasn't really evaluating my next turn appropriately. I blocked with this Funeral Moon to just cover this up, because it's Funeral Moon is an attractive card to block with in Boltyn. To get 3 value, to not allow them to pump. Dustbane is already pumped, so they can still give it go again, of course. But Funeral Moon is just like one of the only blocks in your deck that actually blocks for 3. Your attack actions do block for 3, but they often buff the opponent's attack. So I see that as being like 1 less value. So essentially they block for 2 because they still let like 2 over if they buff it to 4. Anyways, so, and it, like, this was wrong. The reason this was wrong, like, again, Funeral Moon, really attractive to block, attractive block card into Boltyn, but this was my only banished target. So I didn't identify that here, and I didn't want to go back. So they do still have to, they get to buff Raiden, but it's just damage at this point. So we take 3. We were still able to prevent 3 damage. So we still got 3 value out of that card. But here, now we're forced to banish this Revel in Runeblood, and I'm thinking on it, and I'm realizing my mistake at this point. But this is our only target, because we want to go Shadow, Puppetry, give go again to Deathly Delight, Ravenous Rabble, into, I don't know, we can just go bounding from Arsenal if we want to clear our Arsenal up. But yeah, I should have held on to that Funeral Moon, just taken some more damage here. It would have just allowed me to hold on to this Revel in Runeblood and got that 4 value from that Revel. So we traded like 3 life for 4 value. So it was only like 1 point of value if you think about it. But yeah, definitely not correct, I don't think. So here they're just blocking with this helm. I don't know what any of this equipment does. The one thing that you do identify with Boltyn, though, is whether they're running AB or not. And recently I've seen that they aren't running very much AB. So here we have some decisions to make. So we hit with the Deathly Delight, which allowed us to take a look at the top of our deck, and we saw a Deathly Whale on the top of our deck, and we decided to banish it here. So we set up a Deathly Whale. This is either going to be set up for our next turn, but something to think about is with Malefic Incantation. I can't move this out of the way because it's not live. With Malefic Incantation, we got Runechant on swing. So we could break Vexing Quillhand here to send the Deathly Whale. But we also have like another 7 value we could get here and just float the Deathly Whale to the next turn. But we would pop this Runechant. So this is an interesting decision point. I don't know what I chose to do here. I think I just chose to like clear up my hand. Because if we break Vex and go Deathly Whale, I mean, we do still float Runechant to the next turn, but then we're kind of like, we IP ourselves in a way. So I chose to just like, we'll float the Deathly Whale, we'll figure out how to get those 3 Runechants another time. We're just going to send another 7 damage plus that Runechant at their face and see how they deal with that. It clears up our arsenal as well, which I think is the call here too. So I don't know. I'd be interested to see what you guys think about this one. So they're blocking, they're doing stuff, Saving Grace debuffs Ravenous Rabble. That's fine. We send Bounding. It's not going to get the buff since it's not from Banish, but that's okay. It's still just 3 extra damage. So I think they just snap take that and pass. So now we have a Deathly Whale in Arsenal. So we can banish, break Vexing Quillhand. I think no matter what, we need to break Vexing Quillhand here. So Haunting Rendition can make us a Runechant, but we're going to make a Runechant on Banish. And this is not buffed beyond its, it doesn't have a power greater than its base, so Boltyn cannot give it go again. So I'm just wanting to get the 4 value from Haunting Rendition here. In this instance, that extra Runechant doesn't really do much for us because we drew into 3 attack action cards. So I'm actually happy to give them another one of these attack action cards too, but in this case, it's not really necessary. So it's too tempting to banish the Deathly Whale and just start chaining Deathly Whales. So I think the call here on my turn is to banish the Deathly Whale, break Vexing Quillhand, swing in with one of the Deathly Whales, and then hope. I mean, they don't have AB. So Spellbane Aegis does prevent, right? I don't actually know what Spellbane Aegis does. I can't remember. They have 2 of them, though. So I guess we'll keep an eye out for that. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit because they're seemingly taking a while to decide what to do here. Okay, there we go. Now, so they didn't have anything else. They couldn't give this go again since its power was not greater than its base. So interesting. So we actually decided to banish the Deathly Delight. The thinking there is Deathly Delight is going to be easier to shoot out next turn. So with Deathly Delight, we're swinging a whale this turn. Doesn't matter what Spellbane Aegis does, probably going to deal some amount of damage. So we're going to end the turn on 1 rune chant. That means we just need 1 card in hand. No, and we have Malefic Incantation up. So we're going to end on 2 rune chants. I think Whale might have been the call there. Because we're going to end on 2 rune chants very likely. And that means we only need to banish 1 card in order to get the other Whale out. So I think this might have been wrong, actually. I was thinking Delight because it would just be... The thinking is usually it's easier to get out. But in this case, since we're pretty confident... so Spellbane Aegis is still there. I don't know what Spellbane Aegis does. That's on me. So they let all of this hit. No, they're playing out a Soul Shield. That's fine. Strips 2 cards from hand. And we already dealt damage. So we're going to end on 2 chants. I regret not having this Whale now in Banish. So I think the better Banish target would have been the Whale. We decided not to Arsenal. That's important, especially on Redline. With the blue heavy builds, you can get away with arsenaling attack action cards because you can just play them out, right? But in this case, I chose not to Arsenal because we don't know what we're going to draw into. In this case, we drew into 3 non-attaction / D-react. So we wouldn't have, if we Arsenaled this, unless our 4th card on top was an attack, we would have been stuck with that Arsenal. So in this case, didn't really matter. Chances are we would have banished the Deathly Delight on the beginning of our next turn. And in this case, we're going to be banishing this Deathly Whale on our first turn, on this turn. So this is a really great setup here. We can go Mob Skies, Deathly Whale, Revel, and Deathly Delight. And since we have Chance, we are still able to block for 4 here and make another chant. So that really lined up well for us. So it didn't actually matter what we banished at the end of our last turn. However, I do still think that the appropriate or the call would have been banishing the Whale. Even though chances are we would have been in the same situation here. In banishing the Deathly Delight at the beginning of our next turn. So, Spellbane Aegis. It might be Spell Void, so maybe they need to like put it online in order to prevent the damage. I don't know. So we're going to Mob Skies, we're going to Deathly Whale. Kind of a no-brainer play here. So we get 1 more trigger on Malefic Incantation to... so we'll have a rune chant left after we swing. So this was for 4 and 6. Was it for 4? No. Yeah, it was for 4. 4 and 6. Or was it for 3? I don't remember. No, we banished it, so we would have had 3. 3, and then 1 on the back end. 3 and 6, and they have to block this because this is a Mavrian Skies on hit. So they have to give us a couple cards here. See what they decide to do. So 6 go again. They're doing a bit of blocking. They need to give us 2 at least, or some equipment and a card. They're thinking, okay, so they decide to give us 2 cards from hand, cover up the 6. We get to just break chain, make a rune chant, make 4 more, go up to 6, and go 6 and 5. So another 11 damage. Pretty good. Also, in my more recent builds, like in mid-range and in the blue heavy build, I have decided to cut Revel and Runeblood. Revel and Runeblood can feel really good, as you can see on these turns. Excuse me, but it can also feel quite awkward. If it catches you on the wrong turn, where you're just trying to roll chance to the next turn, like after a Deathly Whale or something like that. I'm just going to pause for a second. Then Revel and Runeblood can actually feel like something you don't really want to do, even though it's a 0 for 4. It sort of negates... Well, I mean, you still get the value on Whale. By breaking the chain, you get the rune chance, but you're not able to float them to the next turn because of Revel and Runeblood's second sort of like clause, and that it breaks all rune chance at the end of your turn. And also, like, flail on hits are turned off. So even though it's a 0 for 4... it has enough downside. Like, floating chance of the next turn is actually quite important in Vinset. So, I don't know. I decided to cut it just because I want more consistency in the deck, and I don't want cards in my deck, which is like a similar thinking as to why Read the Runes has been recently cut, even though I think maybe it probably should go back in the list. By the way, in this case, we just had Tunic up. So we're just paying the Tunic resource in order to play out Reduced to Rune Chant. So it's another thing, like when we don't have Rune Chants, Reduced to Rune Chant feels quite bad unless we have Tunic up, and then it kind of saves us. So in this case, we're able to block this 4, not buffing it, even though it's already buffed. It's kind of fine. I could, like, I don't know. Anyways, so to go back to my original thinking is I've tried to cut cards that can feel awkward, that are more situational, that can feel awkward in certain situations, like Revel in Runeblood when you want to float chance, or like Read the Runes when you don't have an Eloquence token, or if you don't have Go Again, or if you don't want to break creepers. So that's the thinking on those two cuts, just trying to up the consistency of the deck and just like lean into the value that Vinset can, you know, we don't need help. Just going to pause again. Reducing value. Like, we want to optimize value over the long term if we're really trying to be a mid-range list, right? So that's my thinking. I don't know if it's correct or not. Revel in Runeblood, it may just be too good to cut. But I don't know. So here we made a rune chant by playing reduced rune chant. I also just had an extra attack action card. That Deathly Wail was not going to be played this turn. So I just, even though it buffed the sword, you know, the sword still came over. It is what it is. So yeah, it kind of reduces the value of that, but it's still 2 value that you save over the long term. And that card wasn't going to be doing anything for me in my hand. In this case, we're just banishing Widespread Ruin to make the second rune chant, swinging the Widespread Ruin as sort of like a 1-card 8, which is quite good. And then we're going to be able to like set up for our next turn by sitting on this Ravenous Rabble in Arsenal. And then we draw into a really interesting hand here. We have Haunting Rendition. We don't really need the rune chant in this case because we have Ravenous Rabble, and Swarming Gloomveil, which on their own can kind of go 4/4/3. We do have Eloquent Eulogy. It would be nice if we had Tunic Resource. However, we're going to banish the Eloquent Eulogy, right? So we don't really have a way of playing the Eloquent Eulogy out because we have no way of giving it Go Again. So banish Eloquent Eulogy. We're just going to go Rabble, Swarming, or Rabble, Swarming, Rabble. It doesn't really matter. We're going to just send those 3. Swarming, there's no way to turn Swarming's second ability on in this case. We don't have Vexing. We're not going to be able to like create more rune chants. Not saying I would break Vexing just to turn Swarming online anyways. It's to get stuff out of banish, but anyways. So this is still damage, and they're at 10. We're at 25, so we have quite a life lead here. We also have an Eloquent Eulogy off top, is what we're seeing with our Ravenous Rabbles. So we're going to go 4, go again, 4, go again, and then 3, go again, and we can still swing Flail as well. And the only way to snuff Flail at this point, since they've locked up both of their pieces of equipment on the first block, is with Tunic. So they either have to give us a card from hand, give us Tunic, or let us have a rune chant for our next turn. In this case, since we have an Eloquent Eulogy off top and an Eloquent Eulogy in banish, we don't really care. We can banish the Eloquent Eulogy to just get out one of the Eloquent Eulogies at the like bottom floor of our next turn. And so they did actually decide to give us Tunic to prevent the Flail on hit, which is fine. So now we have a pretty similar hand, actually. We drew into Eloquent Eulogy. So banish Eloquent Eulogy, make a rune chant. Tunic is going to be online, so we can Creepers in Malefic Incantation, which is actually very good. So it'll be interesting to see the order of this next turn, because when we Creepers in Malefic Incantation, the next attack will create us a rune chant, and we will be able to play Eloquent Eulogy. I'm trying to think. I don't think there is... Yeah, there is a line where we could play both Eloquent Eulogies, and either block with one of the Swarmings, but probably makes more sense to just set it up in Arsenal. So I think we go banish Eloquent Eulogy, play Eloquent Eulogy, Creepers in the Malefic Incantation, Swarming Gloomveil, then on attack we make another rune chant. Swarming will get all of its modes online because we'll make 3 auras with first rune chant, Malefic Incantation, second rune chant on swing. Then we can follow it up with Eloquent Eulogy and sit on the Swarming for the next turn. So that's a really good... It's a good turn. This is important though. Like, it's important to know what Creepers does. And somebody, thank you again for the suggestion. I think it's a great idea, and I'm still reflecting on how best to do it. But somebody suggested I just do a video on Creepers, and like I can do a video on Creepers and like explain how it works, but it'll still have to be under like the Vinset umbrella in terms of like, these are the lines that make sense for Vinset. But the reality is I can never cover, just going to pause it I can never cover like every situation in which creepers would be good. But in this case, the timing for creepers when you want to bring in the Malefic Incantation is really important, because I could also as easily just go swarming, or swarming, Malefic Incantation, swarming. Swarming, Malefic Incantation, swarming, Eloquent Eulogy, and float the Eloquent Eulogy, and not even activate creepers. But with creepers here, it allows us to kind of like still go 3 wide and float another attack over to the next turn without taking any blood debt. But I could also just like, you know, you could creepers at different times, and creepers Malefic is actually really interesting because the timing for that can really matter. What attack you want to creep, you creepers it in front of the attack that you want to create a rune chant for, right? So it's kind of interesting. So yeah, creepers is tricky, and it unlocks a lot of potential from the deck. So I'm going to continue to reflect on how I could best sort of like make that video so that it's like universal, but reality is it's probably still going to be like under the Vinset, with Vinset leaning examples. So there you go. Banish Eloquent Eulogy, play Eloquent Eulogy, creepers in, since we've attacked. The Malefic Incantation restores our action point. Then we can swarming with all modes active. It makes us a rune chant. And then with the rune chant that we made from Malefic, we can Eloquent Eulogy. We wouldn't have been able to swarming because then we wouldn't have the rune chant anymore. So another 4, they're going to have to give us their last piece of equipment and a card from hand. And they have 2 in hand, 1 in arsenal. Our next turn is not great with this that we drew. So we do luckily still have swarming, and they have no AB. So that's our only saving grace. And we have swarming and flail that we can still swing. And we have 2 shadow non-attack, so we can make things unpreventable to make it even more difficult for them to deal with it. In this case, I choose to just give equipment because this is our last turn, and I want to just keep all the tools, even though we don't need all the tools to push damage. I didn't even mention Deadwood Dirge to make more rune chants, so the writing's on the wall, and that was a really good game. So GG's to my opponent there. Not going to try and pronounce your username, but well played. We actually ended up playing a rematch. Things really lined up for me there that turn. We had some really strong turns. We were able to like float a lot of value over to the next turn, things like that. Cool use of creepers in that game as well. So that's kind of the type of game that I like to showcase, is where we have like just interesting play styles, right? Even though I still made a mistake there, but we were able to eke it out. We did have a rematch, and he won. So Boltyn is a pretty like 50-50 for me, in my opinion. Kind of just depends on how, like, whose hands line up better, because Boltyn is in a similar position to Vinset where, you know, the ceiling on that deck is insanely high. But, you know, he's working within constraints as well, right? Sort of that IP, like, where we have to banish at the beginning of the turn. He needs to, like, manage his soul, and the reality is a lot of his cards require him to put cards in soul. So, anyways, big time GGs. That was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys learned something from that. I got 2 more games for you guys, so trying to keep these videos short. 2 more games for you guys that we will sort of like evaluate and talk through. 2 more quick ones on Redline again before Jarl comes in and ruins our fun. Please make sure you subscribe if you like this content. Be sure to get in on the giveaway for the dice or an altar. So I also offered an altar. I put an altar on the table as well. So it's up to you what you're entering, but I'm going to choose 2 winners as soon as we get to 1,000. So help me get to 1,000, making that final push, but we still need 200 subscribers. So be sure to subscribe to help support if you do like this content. So anyways, thanks so much for watching as always, and we will chat really soon. Cheers.